I am so glad we have Carrie today. So Carrie, if I had to like pick a quote that describes Carrie, it would be the change you want to see in the world. Like Carrie is incredible in all that she has done. Her background is in nursing, and I'll let her kind of do more of an intro of who she is and what she does. But I just love Carrie in that if she can't find good quality workers, well then heck, she's going to start training her own workers. If there's not enough people to cover Medicaid, well, she'll figure out how to expand her business so that she can take care of more people that are using this resource in our communities. People need skilled care. Carrie's going to become now a skilled home care agency. Like her heart is in older adults. It's in helping families in the home setting, having that independence and that knowledge. And so she's just going to be a great resource to listen to. But Carrie, do you have just give me, like, I should have asked you for a bio, but how would you describe, like who you are and just a quick brief of your story?
The 411 elevator version.
Yes.
Well, I started loving elderly people when I think I was 10, and we were driving in the car, and my mom, she was honking at an old person, and I said, "Mom, she's just an old lady." So I've loved old people all my life, and and my mom kind of encouraged me to go into the medical field. Ended up doing nursing, worked in cardiac at a local hospital, and then I ended up not working as a nurse and having a paint room pottery studio, and then went back to nursing and did home health care. And so while I was doing home health care, I noticed a need for care. That's kind of where I started. And I went to my boss at the time, who's an amazing mentor for me. And I asked him if it would be okay. It wasn't a conflict. And he said, "Well, the only thing I'm worried about is when you get busy, I'm going to lose you." So I thought that was like the biggest, kind of thing that anyone could say to me. So it was really cool. Started Clover with a friend, and she ended up going and getting her master's in counseling. So I'm doing it on my own now. And we started out private pay, and we started doing Medicaid, and then we help with the Anthem and Homemaker policies, and we serve the VA population. I wanted to do the skilled care as well. So we got our skilled care for Indiana, the skilled license. And now we're working on some contracts for the state because we're WB certified. So we're getting on those contracts, which is really fun and interesting. And I'm learning so much. But I think one of the biggest challenges we've had in the last year is staffing. And I think that I kind of lead into that. And it's been a challenge. And so we've had to be really creative in how we find that talent out there to serve our elderly population. It's only going to triple in the next 10 years. So that's me in a nutshell.
No, Carrie, I always, I met Carrie through some dementia friends. I think that's when we first met.
Yeah.
And then when I ran, I did a care coordination company, and I just really liked that this was nurse owned. Like, I don't know, there was just a different feel of Carrie's company when you had a nursing that was leading it. And I can't explain it to people. And so had just started using her company when we had a need to try to keep folks that I was helping in the home. And this is just and then we'll get into some questions, but what a lot of daughters don't understand is it's you, and it can only be you, but you can only do so much. And so often when people would giving me calls, what I realize is like, there's just this piece that we need to educate daughters of, like, there's a lot of different resources out in the community. It's just trying to be savvy on how you piece together your team. And that's the hardest part. It's on you to piece that together. The doctor's office isn't going to do that for you. Even the home care agency, everyone's just going to hand you stuff, and it's up to you to kind of create this team. And a lot of people don't realize about agencies like Carrie on how they can support them. And I want to also say some people think that these doing the kind of caregiving agencies are just for home. That's absolutely not. I've seen folks being used when care at nursing home, they just need more attention. And Carrie can tell you exactly where some of her caregivers work at. They're used in assisted living. They're used a lot of times in these bridges between those transitions for older adults, because, your parent isn't quite there to meet the qualification of that next level of care, but you're seeing them not have a good quality of life. So caregivers and these kind of agencies are a great partnership that I used a lot when I could sense my families or the daughters were just starting to be very stressful. And we have daughters on here that are in those throes. Like I remember one was telling me, mom had been living at home and then suddenly there's a fall and you realize that your parent isn't in that mobility or ability to stay at home safely anymore. And there's just this overwhelming sense of you don't know what to do. And I always think agencies and companies like Carrie's are a great place to start to figure out, okay, if I start building my team, what can they do and whatnot. And here's the other thing is there's lots of options. So you have caregiving agencies, you have adult daycare, independent living, assisted living, nursing home. The thing with all of those transitions, what I used to tell my families is like, all right, we know assisted living. Everyone thinks assisted living is like this wonderful thing. You're still a daughter that has to manage a lot at assisted living. And it costs like $4,000 a month. So if you think about that $4,000 a month that you're considering spending by putting someone in an assisted living, well, think about, okay, well, that's so many hours of caregiving where maybe if I got some support at home, I could do this at home, right? And it's just trying it out. And then as those hours may need to be increased, and then you reach that $4,000 point, now you're ready for that next level of care. So that's kind of the approach I took with my families is like, what is it that we need? What is that price point of if we went all out in the community resource that we think we need? And then is there a way to do it at home? And when you're thinking about home, that's where I would partner with Carrie to see what is possible, right? But Carrie, the thing that I know that we hear a lot of people don't always understand, and I think you probably face this challenge a lot, is there's this big difference between skilled and unskilled, which we know in our heads what that means.
Right.
But it's really hard. And so kind of just walk through when you're getting like new referrals, like how does a daughter know, like a lot of people just assume they need home care. And then they go down this path of needing home care, but the things that their parents need aren't really home care. Can you just kind of give us some insight on how does a daughter know what to even look for? What are the things happening at the house? What does it look like to know to reach out to someone like you?
Right. Well, so if someone is having difficulty paying their bills or, maybe they're having more car accidents than they're starting to have car accidents, or if they're having some cognitive changes and they're just unable to make certain decisions on their own. That's kind of the time that we need to step in and assist in finding the right team to support your mom or your dad or both of them. Sometimes just having an agency like Clover come in and do a home safety evaluation. We do a real in-depth intake too. And we just ask all these questions. Are they able to make a meal on their own? Are they able to still grocery shop? Are they driving or not driving? As far as a mobility standpoint, do they need a walker or are they in a wheelchair? Are they able to shower on their own? All these different things, do laundry, do, certain things around the home. If they're starting to have difficulties with that, then I would say that, contact an agency like Clover just to have a caregiver come in and help them with those, we call 8 activities of daily living. There are certain times where we come in and someone has really mild dementia and they just need a companion, someone to go outside and walk with them or drive them to the mall to walk around and maybe do some shopping, just to have that socialization, especially if they're living at home with their child, and the child's still working. So I think what makes Clover unique is that it is clinician owned. I'm very involved, and I try to look at the picture holistically and see what can we do, where can we send these people to get the support that they need. If it's that they need someone because their mom's depressed, so let's find a counselor or a social worker that could come in and do some counseling. What if they need a neurologist because maybe there's something going on with their balance and coordination, or I can't tell you how many times, ladies, and you've probably run into this with your parent, where the mom has a urinary tract infection and people don't recognize it quick enough. And UTIs don't present in the elderly like they do for us. And this is like one of my biggest things that I talk about all day long. And my mom and my brother and my team in the office, they're like, Carrie's all about UTIs, but I can diagnose them over the phone. I swear I can. It is just a mild cognitive change or a fall. Those are the two big ones. And I didn't know that until I started doing home health care nursing and really kind of diving into the elderly population. That's when it kind of hit me. Oh my gosh, this person's had a fall. Well, how about this? How about just let's go do a really cheap urine test and check it. And a lot of times just physicians don't look at that. I talked to an ER doc, they don't even check those if someone's had a fall. An elderly person over the age of 65 or 70 has had a fall, and it's not a protocol to check the urine. It's to run all these scans and MRIs and CAT scans and spend all this money instead of doing a real cheap test. And maybe that's it, because it just affects you in so many different ways, from your cognitive changes to your weak, so physical stuff. If you're diabetic, it's going to throw your blood sugars off the chart. So it's kind of a thing that maybe really think about. And I talk about this all the time. So, and maybe it's something that you've already know about and recognize, but that's one of my big things. I talk about UTIs all day long.
I feel like I remember this conversation, and I remember calling you at night, like, something's going on. She's like, has anyone checked your urine? So I can validate that you are passionate about checking UTIs
Yes.
in older adults. And then something that you said, Carrie, I think that's the hardest part with daughters is like, we fill that role of a lot of the things that you were talking about, right? Like grocery shopping, taking your parent places. At what point does a daughter, like, what do you see, like what changes when finally daughters will reach out to services like yours in the community? Like, because we fill this role all the time, and then suddenly we need help. I don't know, like what's kind of the warning signs, just in case some daughters on here are living that.
Right.
What's the thing, like when you hear these stories or you get these calls from daughters, like what are the things that you hear from them of why they need help at that moment?
Well, it's affecting them physically and emotionally. I had a gal on the phone with me, and she was so overwhelmed. The mom had been in the hospital several times, diarrhea, UTI, dehydration, and the dad was at home, and he has pretty severe Alzheimer's. And she just didn't know what else to do. Her sister lives out of town. She's the only one that's here. She has had a huge job here. And she was driving, and then she was like, oh my God. And she hit a mailbox. She's just so overwhelmed and so overstimulated with everything going on. And she just needed that extra support. So I feel like, I am able to bring things together for the families and kind of give them some direction and give them some peace of mind. And a lot of times I'm doing this is a lot of it's all pro bono, just, hey, let's talk about this. What can we do? What steps do we need to take? But yeah, it's where they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, and they just need someone to come in and help them so that they can take a break, so that they can go out and have lunch with their friends, so that they can go outside and take a walk and not worry about mom walking out who's got dementia and getting, hit by a car or something. I mean, it's just extreme, overwhelming sensations and feelings. And that's probably where I see most of it, those phone calls of desperation.
Right. No, I experienced that too. And the thing that then prompted kind of when you were walking through that. So what is that experience? So I find Clover, I find any kind of agency, just kind of walk us through what do I need to have ready, or what do I need to know before calling someone like you, and asking and even like tips on what am I asking for, right? Because you might feel all of that overwhelmingness, but some folks don't know that overwhelming, like what's that next step? What does it look like, I guess? So I say, let's just break it down a little bit. Tell me what things that you are experiencing right now. And let's talk about what kind of help that you need or your parents need. So then I will have a checklist and a pad over here. And I really just kind of have a very in-depth conversation about, well, tell me what's going on with your mom. I start diving into the medical history. I ask for all of the doctor's information,
the medication list. You know, I ask about the home. Is it tri-level? Is it bi-level? You know, are there a lot of rugs around? What's been going on that actually made you call me? Are they having lots of falls, or, you know, are they having some cognition changes? And we'll just kind of break it down. So I would say, you know, medication lists are big, doctor's information, all the diagnoses that they have, and basically what's happened over the last 3 to 6 months of changes with that person, either cognitively or physically, or a combination of both. And then I kind of ask them, what kind of schedule do you feel like would help you have a caregiver come in? Someone who's trained to help your mom or your dad, maybe to help make meals and help them with their incontinent care, help them with laundry or changing the linens on the bed. Just kind of take away some of that responsibility from the children, so that they can have a break and be able to reset and then be a better caregiver. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we cannot take care of our parents. And don't be afraid to ask for help from your family, from your friends.
No,
You have to do that.
And then it's fascinating. And when I was doing the different care coordination, interviewing lots of agencies, and I think that's why I leaned on yours so heavily, because your intake process was so thorough and it was very medically related. And I felt like having that health profile, just, I guess, tell the daughters about, like, what are you doing with that information? So you're taking that information, and then how are you using it to match them, you know, match their parents, you know?
Right. So we have a system called Access Care, and we go in, and I have an intake specialist. Now I'm kind of trained my entire team to be able to do that, but one person in particular, Bridget, does that now, and sometimes Olivia, where we'll go in and we'll ask all these questions like, where do you live? I mean, things like, do they have dentures? Do they wear glasses? Do they use a walker? Do they use a cane? Do they have a wheelchair? Do you have steps going up into your home? Are they on oxygen? What kind of medications do they take? We break it down like that. Let's get the doctor's information. We get all their, you know, the numbers and the addresses and things like that. Diagnoses are real important. I ask them things like, do your parents like to play cards or chess or bingo or Yahtzee or dominoes, things like that, because this keeps them engaged. And what kind of music do they like? Because we have like a care plan that we put that all the caregivers can read. So we might introduce it and say, okay, this is Mrs. Jones. She lives by herself in a condominium complex. This is how we get into their home. This is what we would do upon arrival. She likes to go for walks. She has a dog. She has a cat. You know, we try to get all those attributes, because then we're matching them up with the caregivers that we have, because it's like elderly matchmaking. It really is. And it's so challenging because you've got caregivers that can't go into the home of a smoker. They're allergic to cats. They don't like dogs. Some people say, I don't want to deal with males and their, you know, the hygiene care that comes along with that, or I don't want to do a female. Or so we have all these attributes in our system, so that when we're trying to match a caregiver up with a client, it'll say conflict, because they can't go to someone who has a dog, or they can't go to someone who has a cat, or they're a female or a male, and or driving cars. I mean, some people can't, you know, they're not allowed to drive the client because of transport issues or whatever. So it's a real slick system, and we just ask all this important information so that we can find a caregiver that will really work best with that client, someone who maybe has more experience. What if we have a client who's paralyzed? I mean, even though we're non-skilled, we're still going in and helping that mom who has the daughter who's paralyzed and she needs help, because even just to help her get out of bed, help her give her a shower. So we don't want to send somebody in there who's a caregiver that's never given a shower. So when we're doing the interviewing process, we're asking the caregivers, have you given a shower before? Have you given a bed bath? Do you know how to transport somebody in a wheelchair? Or have you ever assisted someone with mobility with a walker or cane or crutches? Or and so we kind of really deep dive into what the caregivers can do. And then I'm always here to help. I mean, I built this huge training facility. It's pretty cool. It's an apartment, it's a training apartment, which I think sets us apart too. And we just did our first home health aid classes so that we could certify 5 people to be a home health aide in the state of Indiana. So that's pretty cool. But I hire people who are experienced. Unless they're like a nursing student or a PA student, I won't hire anybody off the street that's never done this before. But that's not going to serve me or my clients well. So it's a lot, and there's a lot involved, but I love it. And
no, it is. I always tell Carrie, thank you for doing what you're doing, because I could never do what she does, because she does an incredible job and is very thorough. Now, the other piece, because, a lot of us are like, yes, oh my gosh, I would love to hire all of this, but my parent refuses help. They don't want strangers in their house. So do you have any tips or advice? Like how do you get over that guilt of not listening to your parent? How do you try to bring someone like you to try to win over a parent, right? Like have you just any stories you have to share of what you've done to help daughters overcome those challenges? Because I know those stories. I've heard them from our own daughters. So
yeah, I get that often. What I like to do is I say, let's baby steps first of all, but how about I come out and sit down and talk with your mom or your dad? Because I feel like if they get to know me and understand my motives, then they might feel more comfortable having someone come into their home. If I go out there, or one of my team, and I've trained my upper team to do this, go out and do an assessment of the home, like a home safety evaluation, but kind of you're really getting a feel of that person's environment. And just sit down and talk with them. And just, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just feel like if I'm able to get in front of them, I can make them feel more at ease and explain to them my intentions and what I can help them kind of overcome to be able to feel comfortable to have someone in your home. Because it is challenging. I mean, you're having a stranger come in. But I always say also, I may hit a home run off that first pitch, and I may not. But please communicate with me, because if I don't know it, I can't fix it. I say that to everyone. I say that to my team, my staff out in the field. Take a deep breath. Let me know, because if I don't know it, I can't fix it. And I just let them know if it doesn't work, if it's not a fit, because everybody in this world gets along. So if it's not going to work out, if it's not working out and you guys aren't bonding and blending well, we'll change it. But if I don't know it, I can't fix it. That's my motto.
No, that's, and it is the most intimidating thing, right? Because you feel bad, like this caregiver comes in and I know it's like, because a lot of the daughters are like, my dad is such a grumpy asshole, like, and this, this poor caregiver, and they're just not, and I think having that communication line, and if you don't have that with whatever agency you pick up, like, I love, like Carrie, it was refreshing to work with her, because you don't hear that from all of the different types of companies. Like they almost sound angry if you call and complain again that the caregiver's not working out. That's not your fault, so, and like Carrie said, we're all different in the personality. So, so I appreciate you sharing that, Carrie.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I think is hard for having someone come into their home is they don't feel like they want to tell that person what to do.
Yes.
So I say, let's make a list of things that we can work on in the moment and things that we can work on futuristically. So if you have certain things that you need done every time someone comes, then we'll do that. And then if there's time left over, let's organize the pantry. Let's clean out the refrigerator. Let's, clean out the laundry area, whatever the little things that we can do over time. Because I've had that time and time again where someone says, well, I don't want to feel like I have to tell them what to do and I have to watch over them. And so making those lists are huge.
Right. And if you're not comfortable doing it, and it's just reaching out to say, hey, we're done with those lists. I've noticed the caregiver sitting around a lot. Like Carrie welcomes it, because she wants her workers working and making value. So I've never met someone that's so willing. And I will say too, because I used to always ask caregivers, if they appreciate it, like how they liked working for their different ones. And Carrie's was the first where the caregiver said, it's the first boss I've ever had that called to check on me. like, and I just thought that spoke volumes. So, I don't know. And you're growing and growing. So I can't even imagine how you keep up with all of that. And one of the things I want to highlight and maybe explain to people, because a lot of folks, they have these episodes where it's like you get Medicare covers rehab, and then like you got home care. And suddenly that's when daughters will first learn like, oh, wait, Medicare doesn't cover someone to help me with these, bathing and making sure my parents taking medications or running errands. And that's when a lot of daughters will first start learning about Medicaid and if they qualify or not. And we'll have another whole session or Q&A about that with an elder care lawyer. But Carrie, tell us about your work with those different Medicaid programs and the challenge of it, but as well as, the reward of growing and all of that excitement that's happening. So.
Yeah, I know I get that a lot where people just don't know because they've never had to do it before. And then all of a sudden, their parent wants to stay home in their own home without going into a facility. But how can we do that? So I try to get them comfortable with me to say, this is about me as a nurse talking to you, not a business owner trying to get your business, because that's not my approach. And I just want to be able to help holistically as a case manager. So let's break it down. Do we have the finances to be able to stay in the home? And I'm very honest and open. Look, if you want 24/7 in your home, it's going to cost about $20,000 a month. I mean, it does. And if we can break it down to where we can save some money somewhere, let's say we don't need someone overnight. Let's say you just need 4 days, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. So we kind of break that down a little bit. But I explained to them that, I'll ask questions like, do you have long-term care insurance? And if you have long-term care insurance, then if your parents hit these certain 2 out of the 6 ADLs, and they can qualify to dip into their long-term care insurance. And that's another, discussion about, well, let's initiate that policy. It usually takes 90 days where you have to pay out of pocket before it'll kick in. So long-term care is one. There's that new homemaker policy with like the Medicare Advantage plans where the client can dip into what they call homemaker. It's not really skilled. It's more like housekeeping. And non-skilled agencies like Clover can provide that service. But it's more housekeeping. So then your challenge is you've got these caregivers that are really quote unquote skilled, don't want to do housekeeping. So that's another challenge. But then what if you're a VA? If you're a veteran, you can dip into some money that they have, that aid and attendance benefit package. If you're a veteran, there's certain specifications there too about, what your assets are. And the elder law attorneys are really knowledgeable about that. And then the Medicaid. So if you're a Medicaid, if you have Medicaid, then we can do what we call a Medicaid waiver referral. And so a lot of these clients that we've had through like Anthem, because we have a provider through Anthem, will say, oh, well, I am Medicaid. We can get you some more hours if you are, because we can just make this Medicaid waiver referral program, a referral for you, and you can initiate that program. So we have, so Olivia here at Clover, she kind of manages that. So I'll just say, hey, Olivia, they have Medicaid, make that referral. And so sometimes we can get more hours and more help that way. And then private pay, of course, but it's expensive. And so, I'm very clear about that. And then we kind of look at all the different things that we could do. Our mission is to keep people in the home,
right,
safely, happy. If they're safe and happy, then as long as possible. And if they can, unfortunately, it's sad, but it's expensive, so to afford it.
Right. No, and then Carrie, do you mind sharing your rates? I mean, that gives us some like a basis, because I know I used to know them better, like, but what is a typical rate, I guess, for Clover?
So we used to do like a different rate for the week and the weekend. It's getting complicated. So our flat rate is $30 an hour.
Okay.
And then if you wanted, and it's a 3-hour minimum, that doesn't mean, it's just three hours. It doesn't have to be, that you have to do it 5 days a week. It's just 3 hours at one time. And then if you just need someone to come in and help with the shower, it's a $45 1 hour visit rate. So we have the $30 an hour and then $45 visit rate. And then I do the RN case management as well, which is $95 an hour.
Okay. no, it's just a kind of a one-stop shop. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that. I know that's
you're
always tough,
welcome.
but I think it's always good when you're trying as the daughter to come up with that plan and you know the finances and you're trying to figure out what are those resources. And then Carrie, tell me a little bit about like where you have seen, and I know you've had these conversations, is, when it's no longer safe at home. Like, have you seen that in your
Yeah,
agency? And yeah.
it's tough. You want to be, I have that right now. I have a gal who's in her home and she's a shut-in and she really needs more care, but she's kind of refusing, but she still is very cognitively there. She can make her own decisions. She really needs more care. I mean, she needs people in there more and she's just kind of refusing it. And she doesn't have anybody else. So if that were the case, I'd probably have to get the state involved there. Right now we're just we're offering her the support that she needs and continuing to have that open conversation with her. If it's someone at home and they're saying to me, Mom's just not safe at home, she's not making the right decisions, I'm worried that she could just go outside and start wandering, then we need to talk about what we can afford. Can we get someone in there to help? Does she need to be moved in with you? Do you need to bring your parent home, or do we need to go ahead and put them into an assisted living where they have more support? And a lot of people just don't want to do that. They want to stay in the home until they die. So it's just being really creative and kind of figuring out what kind of support you have with your family. And if the family's stretched thin, I mean, face it, we're working. We're kind of in that stage of our life where we're working really hard to try and be able to retire comfortably. So what do I do with Mom? So that's the tough part of it, trying to figure out when you pull that trigger.
Yeah.
And say,
no, it's creativity. Like, I mean, that is what you need when you're kind of piecemealing this together 100%. I mean, you and I had one client that we were the most creative with. I mean, we found someone to live in the basement for rent, and to cover the overnight. And then we used Carrie's team during the day. Like,
and she was able to stay home, and that was so wonderful.
It is. And that's where I always tell families too, it's almost starting off with and it's okay if it's kind of figure out what is the overall goal. If the overall goal is by God, the most important thing is that she dies in this house, right? Then we need to let all of our team know that and what is possible, and where will it be a challenge, and those are super tough conversations. I feel like I had one more question, but I wanted, as I'm looking, kind of think of your questions. We'll open it up. If anyone had specific questions for Carrie, we'll probably stop recording and then get some other questions going. I feel like, my other question, because this is a big one. And so there is care.com, right? There's you can just hire your own caregiver, or you could go look for kind of the agency. Just what in your mindset, because I have my own ideas, but what are the pluses and minuses, as a daughter trying to piecemeal their plan for their parents? What do you think what are things to be careful with, the care.com and just hiring your own?
Well, you have to make sure that the person that you hire has insurance, liability insurance. A lot of people, let's face it, if you hire someone privately, you're going to save some money. Mm-hmm. But what if they fall in your home and break their wrist? This has happened to me, where my employee fell in the home and broke her wrist. Well, that's workman's comp, that's insurance. And so, and then are they vetted? Because even though we can vet people to the nines, you're going to still probably have somebody get in somehow. But if you don't run background checks on these people, you're not going to know, even a baseline. Mm-hmm. So as far as care.com, I do not understand care.com very much. I haven't really looked into it. So I couldn't kind of talk about that. But as far as hiring someone privately versus an agency, you're going to have that support. You're going to have the people running the national background checks. You're going to have some education involved. You're going to have an additional backup just in case. So if that private pay person doesn't work out, or they flake, or they don't show up, then the agency is going to probably be able to get someone out there to help you.
Mhm. No, those are great, because that's where I used to think you could piecemeal, but it's so much work. And it's, again, it's dealing with a human being. And so having someone like, because you have Carrie, and then you actually have a whole team of Carries, and then you have the workers that are in there. And so, because that is, to me, even the most wonderful independent caregiver, they're just like us, they get burnout. And so that's what's wonderful about Carrie's team, is they're supporting those caregivers in your home with training, with emotional support, financial support, right? And different resources to keep them as engaged and and on top of their game. Where the independent folks, I mean, they are, sometimes they're a great Band-Aid, but if you know longer term, this is going to be the team I need at home, I definitely would look into different agencies and see.